Hi, welcome to class. We are going to talk about how our social networks and how our family, our friends, our peers, our neighbors influence our behavior and also our health behaviors. So I show this adorable picture of meerkats to draw the comparison between people and meerkats, in that humans, similar to, again, to meerkats, are social animals, and we learn from the people around us. We learn what's appropriate to do, what food should we eat, what Netflix shows should we binge, what are behaviors that are, again, positively reinforced, what behaviors are punished. And throughout our lives, we are watching other people to see, again, what are trends? What are social trends? What's popular to do? What's not popular to do? What's appropriate? Again, we learn from other people. We learn from social trends. We also learn from marketing and advertising. So how do we learn this information then? How are we socialized? How do we learn? Now, I just want to mention that there are a myriad of different types of cognitive and behavioral theories. If you ever take a psychology course, I find them fascinating. You can learn so much more and in much more depth. I just want to brush on a couple when describing, again, how we learn from other people. So two researchers by the name, two behavioral uh, researchers, Watson and Rayner, wanted to show and wanted to understand how we can condition people to respond in certain ways. So following on the heels of Pavlov, I don't know if you've ever heard of the scientific experiment with Pavlov's dog, where a dog was basically trained to salivate every time he heard a bell. It was a conditioned response. Watson wanted to study the same thing, but within people. Um, and so within this particular experiment, Watson and Rayner asked the question of, can you condition a fear response? Can you teach people how to fear certain stimuli through classical conditioning? So in this experiment, there was a child who's nicknamed Little Albert. The child was 9 months old. Prior to the experiment, little Albert was not afraid of any of the stimuli that were introduced into the study. So we'll focus on just one of the stimuli, the white rat. But there were also rabbits, a monkey, and also different masks. So prior to the study, I guess at baseline, little Albert didn't have fear of the white rat. Well, Watson and Rayner began testing if they could instill a new sense of fear by taking a hammer and a steel bar and banging the steel bar suddenly and without warning behind little Albert's head. Well, what do you think that would do? That loud sound is going to scare the dickens out of this poor 9-month-old child, and the baby would start crying uncontrollably out, largely of fear of having heard that sound. These studies continued for 7 weeks with little Albert, and what they learned over time was that, yes, in fact, fear and different behavioral responses can be conditioned. So in what way does that, can we generalize this to other behaviors? Well, you can train people how to respond. You can train them with a form of positive reinforcements as well as negative negative reinforcements as well as punishments, right? So that goes on to our next theory um, of operant conditioning, that people can be conditioned, and also animals can be conditioned via reinforcement to try to reinforce positive behaviors or to stop negative behaviors, stop certain behaviors via punishment. Skinner was famous for something nicknamed the Skinner box. This was a box in which if a rat engaged in a certain behavior, it would be given pellets or food. So pushing a lever could lead to food being dispensed. On the other hand, pushing the lever could give it a punishment, a form of a shock. So this negative response. And what B.F. Skinner was able to show is that animals, later on humans, will respond positively to positive forms of reinforcement and can stop engaging in certain behaviors if if they experience some form of punishment. There's also another theory called the social cognitive theory, and this is pretty popular within public health and a lot of other health-related fields. This is basically trying to describe how social context has this dynamic and reciprocal interaction with an individual, with their personal and with a person with their personal traits, with the environment around the person, the physical environment, the built environment, the social environment, and how this can in turn impact human behavior. So in this theory, it's basically saying that cognitive factors, behavioral factors, environmental factors all impact each other and pretty fluidly. So there's this dynamic and reciprocal interaction of a person, the person's environment and behavior. A person's able to enact certain types of behaviors, and by changing aspects about their cognitive factors, so making them more aware of a behavior, setting expectations for them, helping them create positive or negative attitudes towards certain behaviors. So like, take for instance, if you were going to try to help someone quit smoking, you try to instill a negative attitude about that behavior. If you were trying to have someone begin flossing more readily, flossing their teeth, you'd probably want to give them information about how, flossing is, incredibly healthy for you. It can reduce not only cavities, but lack of flossing is linked to, poor cardiovascular health over time. So you want to also give people behavioral skills and create in them a sense of self-efficacy or confidence in enacting a behavior. And you also want to put in place different environmental factors that make it easier to enact that behavior. Whether that would be changing the social environment around the individual, creating social norms to engage or not to engage in certain behaviors, whether you've got social support, or whether you change something about the actual physical or built environment around an individual to therefore impact human behavior. There are also ecological theories which describe how we are impacted by the environment around us. Bronfenbrenner was a famous theorist who described how there are three different systems. There's a microsystem. If you look towards the inside of the circle, that incorporates family and school and classroom and your peers and your religion groups. This is the immediate environment and daily interactions with others, and that can influence your behaviors. The exosystem is the next circle, the next sphere around this individual. It's the middle system. It includes social setting. People don't necessarily directly experience, influences at this level, but it does affect, but development is affected at this level. And the macro system is the larger system. It contains cultural and subcultural beliefs. And this in turn, again, impacts what we know are options for behaviors, what behaviors are socially acceptable. All of these different systems, the microsystem, the exosystem, and the macro system, interact to influence human behavior. I thought this was also interesting to include. I know we haven't talked much on gender and gender identity and gender expression and biological sex and sexual orientation, but I just want to touch a bit on how we are trained in our genders over time, how we are taught to enact certain genders. So again, these are just the different ways to describe what's the difference between gender identity, how you perceive yourself as being more masculine or feminine, how you express that. Biological sex really being assigned to your chromosomes as male or female or intersex, a combination of the two. If you have, say, if you are considered intersex, a term that used to be used for that was hermaphrodite. I haven't heard that term in quite some time, however. And then sexual orientation is who you're attracted to, who you're physically, spiritually, and emotionally attracted to. We're going to talk a bit about gender and gender expression, however. So there have been different theories over the years about what drives, the way that we enact our gender. I'm sure you've heard, boys are given toys that are meant to help them become more aggressive. They're given toys that also enhance, building and construction. And, you have toys that encourage fighting, right? Where girls traditionally were given dolls and cooking toys, and we're really more geared towards encouraging a more communal uh, approach for development. So really kind of becoming caretakers, while men are encouraging more traits of agency or agentic traits of what seem to somewhat more aggressive. There are other theories, however, and this is one by researchers Money and Ehrenhart. It's a biosocial theory that we are labeled as being male or female when we're born. Different social labels are attached to us. We're given differential treatment, such as giving people different toys, giving children different toys, positively reinforcing behaviors that are concordant with our gender. So, oh, you're such a strong little boy, or you did so well on that, you're so strong, you did so well on this particular exam or test, etc. That we are socially labeled, oh, you're a boy, you wear blue, or you wear pink if you're a girl, and given different types of social labels, and we're treated differently, and that's really what drives our becoming, or our enactment of our gender. So it's a really interesting study to try to prove this theory. Dr. Money specifically often would work with sexual reassignment. In the case, I just want to give you this example because I thought it was absolutely fascinating. This is an example of someone known as Bruce Reimer. There was a family that gave birth, Janet Reimer gave birth to two sons in August of 1965. And unfortunately, during a routine circumcision, the doctor who was performing the circumcision was using faulty electrical equipment, which malfunctioned. And on the last trial, one of the children, Bruce Reimer, as opposed to his brother Brian Reimer, during the circumcision, Bruce's entire penis was burnt off, and Brian was not operated on. So they just decided, no, we're going to stop. The equipment is faulty. Stop the surgeries. We can't we can't continue on. The family was just absolutely distraught. Here is this new baby boy. And unfortunately, because of faulty electrical equipment and the surgery, now this child no longer has the very appendage which helps to, in the family's mind, define this child as biologically male. In the 60s, plastic surgery was not an option. Even today, it's not recommended for newborns to go any kind of penis reconstruction operations. Well, several months later, Janet and her husband, Ron, saw a television program that advertised these developmental theorists who were also sexologists, and they were debating sex reassignment surgeries, and basically were saying, oh, well, because gender really is only driven by social labeling and by differential treatment, if you just raise this baby as a girl, the baby will be just fine. So Bruce Reimer, in turn, there was a surgery to remove all of the remaining parts of his penis and give him what looked like a mock vagina. And Bruce was renamed Brenda. So in turn, Bruce became Brenda. And so over time, the Reimers really did try to bring their son up as a girl. They enrolled Brenda in Girl Scouts. They enrolled Brian, the twin brother, in Boy Scouts. They dressed Bruce as a female. Again, this child now named Brenda. They tried to, again, really treat Brenda as though, or Bruce, as though Brenda had always been the natural identity for this child. And it was around puberty when Brenda began really feeling out of touch with his body. And over time, the family finally revealed the secret that Brenda was in fact Bruce and had been born Bruce Reimer. And so over time, Bruce decided to undergo again reconstructive surgery, was married, but both he and his brother Brian really did have a whole host of negative psychological issues due to this trauma. And this just really went on to prove that no, it's not just nurture that impacts your gender development. If you find this topic interesting, I'd also highly recommend looking up examples of when people have raised their children or aim to raise their children without a gender. It's a totally different example, but there was a family in Canada. They gave birth to a child named Storm Stalker. The gender of this child was not revealed pretty much for years, except the only people who knew the gender of the child were, of course, the individual who delivered, the physician who delivered the child, as well as the children, the siblings of Storm. So it's really interesting to look at, again, how we are socially labeled, how we are treated in certain ways, and that reinforces our sense of gender. However, nature does, in fact, play some role in gender identity. So there's another theory called social learning theory, and it basically shows that again, through differential reinforcement and also from learning, from watching other people, observational learning, we somewhat teach ourselves different identities in form of masculine and feminine identities. Kohlberg, who's also known for a theory of moral development, continued on by saying that we develop we're not just passive recipients of our learning, we're actually active, proactive in teaching ourselves how to be more feminine or how to be more masculine. That there's this whole gender role development, and it's similar to stage-like changes in cognitive development. We engage in self-socialization and in stage-like manner, teach ourselves how to be more similar or different than other people with whom we identify. So how does this all, link back? It seems kind of a strange mix of including some of these behavioral theories and then also looking at different theories of gender development. But it just goes to show you that we learn from other people. We're treated differently by other people. We're treated similarly to other people at certain times, but it's that treatment, right? And it's the watching other people, and it's the different forms of rewards, and it's this whole host of influencing factors that influence why we do what we do. We're interconnected, and our health is interconnected. And recognizing the social aspect is really critical in terms of creating, health programs to understand that other people in your social network matter. Social networks also offer different kinds of mechanisms which can be helpful for enacting behaviors and behavior change, such as providing social support, offering, a sense of what's normal or social norms. By engaging other people, we learn what's acceptable or not acceptable. They also can help provide access to resources such as jobs or information or financial resources that make it easier or more difficult to enact certain behaviors. So again, just think of that adage that says, no man is an island. In terms of our development, in terms of what we know, in terms of how we act, no person is an island. And we're definitely influenced by those in our environment, by what we learn on TV, by what's modeled around us, by advertising and marketing, and also by the culture and various cultures around us. And that's all I have for this particular slide set.